Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about I got back from Arizona in my 63 Chevy pickup truck, living with my grandparents, and going to start working and then eventually build a house at 22 years old and everything that goes along with it. Let's go. So here I was, back from Arizona. I spent 3 years out west driving around, working jobs, and found my way back in New Hampshire. Working at a ski resort, living in my grandparents' extra bedroom. One of the best times of my life. Grandparents were two of my favorite people ever. So from there, I got a job at Waterville Valley, working at the snowboard rental shop. And that first winter was amazing. And then come the summer, I ended up working for my uncle, running excavator, and eventually got my truck driver's license. And from there, spent the summer labor work with him and learning all new stuff. And that took about a year and a half. I worked for him, got my own place, and then was actually ready to sell all my stuff and heading to Montana. I was going to go back out west and wanted to see Montana and Wyoming. And my uncle made me an offer. There was 2 pieces of land that came up for sale, for auction, and he was going to buy them both and wanted to know if I wanted to buy one, if I stuck around and worked with him. So I did. It was a great opportunity. The land was only $4,500, and I was able to work it off and make a payment each week. So I was working 2 jobs. I worked with my uncle, and I worked up at Waterville Valley cleaning pools. And then I also got a job being a bar back and working the door at a college bar in town. So now that I have the property, I needed to cut my expenses as much as I could. My grandfather had this pop-up camper that he got from the dump. So we brought the pop-up camper onto the property, got it all set up, got a old refrigerator from the dump, and got that all hooked up. I had Christmas lights and stuff outside. So when I came out of the camper, it was like Christmas lights everywhere. And there was my refrigerator that I would keep a strap around so make sure the bears don't get into it. They would have torn it open anyway, but luckily they never got into it. And around that same time, job we were doing, we were putting in a horse arena and a job up on Ellsworth. And the owners of the place came across golden retriever that was only like a year old. They put an ad in, tried to find the owners for a month. No one came around. So he called me and asked me if I wanted a dog. And that was my first dog, Bud. He came into the picture. So Bud and I stayed in the pop-up camper for about 5 or 6 months until about December, just about Christmas, and started to get a little cold. I had 2 sleeping bags that were zipped together, and me and the dog would sleep in it so we'd stay warm. Once I got the frame of the house up, I had enough money to insulate one part of the roof, and then I put some plastic poly down, and we stayed in that with an electric heater over the winter. It was about an 8x8 on the slope of the roof area. It's crazy. So to help me with this process, my grandfather was around, and my uncle would let me use equipment if I needed it on the weekends to get all the wood cut and get the slab laid out and ready to pour concrete. There was a lot of white pine trees, and I had them milled at a local mill. So I was able to get my lumber from that and to build the whole house. And I had the luxury of my grandfather and spending that time with him, and the 2 of us framed the house together. It was only a 26 by 26 house, the salt box style house, so there was 3 bedrooms, full bath and a kitchen, but it was small enough and it was fine for me for my first house. So you don't need to build a McMansion for your very first house. And again, I was 22 years old, and perfect scenario for me. Yes, there was things I had to get from the dump, and used windows, used kitchen cabinets. But by the time I was done with this house, I had a $10,000 mortgage. But I also worked 3 jobs. I was working 3 jobs, and then I was working on the house on my free time. So, like I said, I had the luxury of my uncle and my grandfather being there, but none of this would have worked if I was just sitting around doing nothing. So you have to put the time in and have the 3 jobs. So each week, buy another set of outlets, 1 box of outlets, and then when it comes time to insulate, 1 roll of insulation a week or something like that. So now that I had the frame and we got it all wired and plumbed, some of the best times hanging out with my grandfather. He would get everything from the dump. So that before PEX pipe was around, it was all copper. So him and I would sit there for hours and sweat out the joints, like all the little copper joints, and then put it back together so I could have a shower and a toilet and the kitchen sink and all that fun stuff. So that was a lot of good quality time hanging out with one of my favorite people ever. And then I got it insulated slowly but surely each week. Buy another thing insulation, another thing insulation. I had a wood stove, so the heating was no problem. And then the springtime came around and got ready for sheetrock. Now that I started putting sheetrock up, I had a functional bathroom. I had a functional kitchen. The kitchen I got, there was no Facebook Marketplace or anything like that. And I found it in the newspaper. Someone remodeled their kitchen. They're just trying to get rid of this kitchen. So I got a used kitchen, got it over there. So we got a functional kitchen now, functional bathroom. So there I was, hanging sheetrock. So I got 1 room done, and first thing I did was found a roommate. The roommate came in and started charging him $210 a month for the room and the house. So $210 a month. I had gone to the bank because by this time I had the frame, the property itself. I had the well dug and I had the leach field in, and they gave me a loan for $10,000, and that's what I needed to pay my uncle for the rest of the land and for some of the materials for the well and septic system. So my mortgage was $210 a month, and the guy that moved into the room was about 35 years old. At this point, I'm about 23, and he was like, I refuse to pay a 23-year-old mortgage. So every week, he would give me $209 a month. Not every week. He would give me $209 a month. So, Brad, if you're watching out there, you still owe me like 40 bucks, dude. So now that he's renting a room from me, I started sheetrocking the remainder of the house. And as I finished the bedroom, I rented the next bedroom out to another buddy of mine. And once I was all done sheetrocking, and the house and the inside was pretty close, I had both bedrooms rented out, and I was basically living for free. I even made a couple of bucks at the end of each month after paying my share of the utilities and everything. So this was really working out. So at 23 years old, almost 24, I did the smartest thing that a 24-year-old would do. I had extra money coming from the house, so I bought a Harley. Isn't that what normal people do? So I know buying a motorcycle isn't the best asset, but again, I was 24, and it came around to helping me, because having the motorcycle, I was like, I need to have a place to put this thing. So I built a garage, and up above the garage there was enough space for a studio apartment. So I built an apartment, had my own washer and dryer, my own little kitchenette, made it a full bath, and I lived upstairs in the apartment, and I rented the house out to 3 other people. So now my mortgage was paid for, my utilities were paid for, and my motorcycle was paid for, and I had some extra money. So that really got me thinking, like, wow, there might be something to this whole thing, building something and renting it out. So my plan continued to be to build another house or something like that and rent it out. Now, again, at this point, I was 25-ish, and I was working for a contractor and learning more and more how to build houses, and I really started focusing on that, like learning how to build from the bottom up. I had the site work experience under my belt and what I had learned from my grandfather and uncle from building. So now I was working for an official builder and learning even more. And I did that for about 3 years until I got married. But the whole time I was still working 2 or 3 jobs. I'd work as a lifty at the mountain in the winter and bang nails, and I'd still working the door and bar backing. That's actually where I met my wife. And yeah, then at 28, her and I got married, and I started building a bunch of duplexes and triplexes, and it's landed to where we are now. So if you start in your 20s and you put the work in, it'll pay off when you're 53. I'm not a gazillionaire, but putting in that little extra work like really helped me to where I am now, that I don't have to kill myself at 53. And I'm actually pretty happy. If you guys are digging this story at all, please subscribe, comment, stuff like that. I love talking about the past and how we all got here, and it's a lot of fun. So subscribe and thumbs up, and write some comments. So in a nutshell, somebody teaches you something, you listen to someone who's older than you, they've been there, they've done that. And I listened to my grandfather and my uncle because they had both been here and done that. And then guys I met working for the contractor, you just listen to people that are older than you. Yes, there's some guys out there that obviously they're at the bar at noontime. You don't really take advice from those kind of people. But when you see somebody, whether it's success you think with a lot of money, or success that they just have a great life. They don't have tons of money, but they have a great life. You listen to them. Take the time to listen to them. And that's exactly what I did. And I have a great life. Like I said, I'm not rolling in it, but I get to go on my vacations. I'm helping my kids pay their way through school. You just need to sacrifice a little bit in your 20s to get there. You can do it.